For a long time, empaths were told they were too sensitive for this world, too emotional, too soft. They were advised to toughen up, to stop feeling so much, to stop caring so deeply. And for years, it seemed like the world rewarded the opposite: coldness, dominance, aggression, and control. But something has shifted. Empaths are entering their most powerful era, and almost no one sees it coming. This isn't because the world suddenly became kinder. It's because empaths evolved. They learned. They adapted. They stopped confusing openness with access and compassion with self-sacrifice. And in doing so, they unlocked a form of power that Machiavelli himself would have respected: the power of understanding human nature without being ruled by it. Empaths naturally read emotional undercurrents. They sense intention before words are spoken. They detect shifts in energy, tone, and behavior that others miss entirely. In the past, this made them vulnerable. Now it makes them strategic. Machiavelli taught that the most effective form of power is not brute force, but perception, knowing how people think, what they fear, and what drives their decisions. Empaths have always had this insight. What they lacked was protection, boundaries, control. That era is over. The modern empath no longer rushes to explain themselves. They no longer chase validation or overextend emotionally. They observe. They pause. They choose carefully where to invest their time, energy, and loyalty. And that restraint changes everything. This is not a loud rise. It's a quiet one. People don't realize the empath has changed until they no longer have access. Until their manipulation stops working. Until emotional leverage disappears. That's when confusion sets in, because the empath they thought they understood is no longer predictable. If you're watching this, you may already feel it. A detachment from chaos. A clarity you didn't have before. A sense that you no longer need to prove who you are. Comment: I'm stepping into my power if this resonates. Because this video will break down why empaths are rising now, how Machiavellian strategy plays a role in that rise, and what this new era actually looks like. This isn't about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming aware. And awareness is power. To understand why empaths are now entering their most powerful era, we need to be honest about the past. For a long time, empathy wasn't rewarded, it was exploited. Empaths lived by an unspoken rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. They assumed sincerity would be met with sincerity, honesty with honesty, and care with care. But Machiavelli warned against this exact mistake. He wrote that those who rely solely on virtue will be ruined by those who do not play by the same rules. Empaths didn't fail because they cared too much. They failed because they projected their values onto people who didn't share them. In workplaces, relationships, friendships, and families, empaths were often the emotional backbone. They listened. They mediated. They absorbed tension so others could remain comfortable. And while that made them useful, it did not make them powerful. In fact, it made them predictable. Predictability is dangerous. Machiavelli understood that people take advantage of consistency when it benefits them. When someone knows you'll forgive, they push further. When someone knows you'll explain yourself, they provoke. When someone knows you'll stay, they stop respecting your presence. Empaths were taught to resolve conflict instead of reading it, to empathize instead of evaluate, to give instead of assess cost. And in a world driven by self-interest, this left them exposed. This created a painful cycle. The more you gave, the more was expected. The more you understood others, the less they understood you. And over time, this led to exhaustion, betrayal, and emotional burnout. But here's the key insight. This pain wasn't failure, it was education. Empaths learned how manipulation feels. They learned how people test limits. They learned how charm hides intention. Most importantly, they learned what happens when empathy lacks boundaries. That lesson changed everything. The empath of today is no longer naive. They've seen enough patterns repeat to stop believing in coincidence. They understand now that kindness without discernment is a liability, but kindness with awareness is leverage. This realization marks the end of the old paradigm. Comment: I learned the hard way if this resonates. Because once an empath understands why empathy used to work against them, they're finally ready to use it the right way. And that's where true power begins. This is where the shift truly begins: awareness. What most people don't realize is that empaths are natural pattern recognizers. You don't just hear what people say. You notice when their words don't match their actions. You sense changes in energy, tone, and behavior long before others consciously register them. In the past, this awareness overwhelmed you. Now it empowers you. Machiavelli believed that understanding human behavior was the foundation of all power. Those who could anticipate reactions, motives, and shifts in loyalty always stayed ahead. Empaths have always possessed this ability, but only now are they learning how to trust it without reacting emotionally. Before, when something felt off, you questioned yourself. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You explained away red flags because you didn't want to be unfair. But repeated experience taught you something crucial. Patterns matter more than intentions. Once you start focusing on patterns, confusion disappears. You notice who only shows up when they need something. You notice who withdraws when you set boundaries. You notice who respects your time and who resents it. This level of awareness turns empathy into intelligence. Machiavelli warned that most people are ruled by appearances, not truth. Empaths, once awakened, see past appearances naturally. They sense manipulation before it's proven. They feel shifts in loyalty before betrayal occurs. And instead of confronting, they observe. This restraint is everything. You stop reacting to every emotional signal. You let people reveal themselves over time. You gather information quietly without exposing your inner world. And because you no longer rush to fix or confront, others become careless. They show you who they are. This is why empaths are entering a powerful era now. In a world full of noise, impulsivity, and emotional overreaction, the calm observer holds the advantage. While others speak too much and act too fast, the empath waits, and waiting reveals the board. Awareness also changes how you move. You invest less, but with more precision. You speak less, but with more impact. You care deeply, but selectively. Comment: I see the patterns if this resonates. Because once an empath learns to prioritize awareness over explanation, they stop being emotionally reactive and start becoming strategically aligned. And from that point on, nothing looks the same again. This is the moment where empaths truly step into power, emotional control, not emotional suppression, not emotional coldness, but emotional discipline. Machiavelli made one thing very clear: anyone who cannot control themselves will eventually be controlled by others. For a long time, empaths felt deeply but expressed everything. They explained their pain. They revealed disappointment. They reacted in real time. And while that honesty felt authentic, it also made them transparent. Transparency without strategy is exposure. Now, something has changed. Empaths still feel just as deeply, but they've learned not to leak emotion to people who haven't earned access. They pause before reacting. They sit with information. They allow emotions to inform them, not command them. This alone shifts the balance of power. When you stop reacting immediately, people lose leverage over you. They can no longer provoke clarity, guilt, or reassurance on demand. Silence replaces explanation. Observation replaces confrontation. And suddenly, those who relied on your emotional availability feel disoriented. Machiavelli understood this psychological effect well. When someone expects a reaction and doesn't get one, they begin to reveal themselves through impatience, overreaching, or contradiction. Emotional control forces others to move first. For empaths, this is liberation. You stop chasing emotional resolution. You stop needing to be understood. You stop proving your intentions. Instead, you become steady, centered, harder to read. This doesn't make you less compassionate. It makes your compassion intentional. You choose when to engage, when to withdraw, and when to remain neutral. That choice alone restores your authority. People begin to sense something different about you. They can't quite explain it, but they feel it. You're no longer emotionally predictable. You're no longer easily influenced. And unpredictability, when paired with calm, is deeply powerful. Comment: I control my emotions if this resonates. Because when an empath masters emotional discipline, they stop giving power away unconsciously and start holding it with quiet confidence. And this is only the middle of the rise. This is where the empath's power becomes visible, not through force, but through absence. Boundaries are the turning point, not the loud kind, not the confrontational kind. The kind that simply changes who has access to you and who doesn't. Machiavelli understood that power often lies not in what you do, but in what you allow. In the past, people had unlimited access to your time, energy, and emotional presence. You replied quickly. You made yourself available. You tried to be fair, understanding, and accommodating. And because access was easy, it was undervalued. Now access is selective. You don't explain your distance. You don't justify your boundaries. You don't negotiate your self-respect. You simply adjust availability and let behavior speak. This is deeply unsettling to people who benefited from your openness. They feel the shift immediately. The emotional supply they relied on is no longer guaranteed. And instead of confronting you directly, many reveal themselves through entitlement, guilt-tripping, or withdrawal. Machiavelli warned that people grow resentful when privileges are removed, even if they were never entitled to them in the first place. Empaths experience this firsthand when they stop overgiving. But here is the transformation. You no longer fear losing people who can respect your boundaries. You understand that access is a privilege, not a right. You reserve closeness for those who show consistency, respect, and emotional maturity, not those who demand it. This recalibration restores balance. Your time becomes valuable again. Your energy becomes protected. Your presence becomes intentional. And the quality of your relationships improves, not because you're doing more, but because you're tolerating less. Machiavelli believed that those who control access control influence. Empaths, once boundary aware, embody this naturally. You don't need to dominate. You don't need to threaten. Distance does the work for you. People either rise to meet your standards or fade out of relevance. Comment: access is earned if this resonates. Because when empaths learn to guard their access, they stop being drained by the world and start shaping how the world approaches them. And from here, the power only compounds. This is one of the most powerful shifts an empath can make: strategic detachment. In the past, you cared deeply about outcomes. You wanted clarity, closure, harmony. You invested emotionally in how things turned out and how people perceived you. That attachment gave others leverage, because whoever controls the outcome controls the emotions tied to it. Machiavelli warned against this. He understood that the moment you need a specific result, you lose flexibility, and flexibility is power. The evolved empath still cares, but no longer clings. You detach from outcomes without becoming indifferent. You do your part, act with integrity, and then let events unfold without chasing reassurance or forcing resolution. This detachment is not coldness, it's self-command. And it changes everything. When you stop needing validation, people feel it. When you stop chasing closure, confusion loses power. When you stop forcing alignment, truth reveals itself naturally. Strategic detachment makes you unpredictable. Others can't bait you with silence, approval, or withdrawal anymore. Emotional hooks stop working. Games fall flat. Machiavelli understood that people reveal their intentions when they realize they no longer control your reaction. Detachment forces this realization. Those with genuine respect stay steady. Those with hidden agendas grow restless. For the empath, this is freedom. You no longer overinvest early. You no longer rescue situations that aren't yours to fix. You no longer abandon yourself to maintain connection. You allow relationships, opportunities, and conversations to rise or fall on their own merit. This makes your presence heavier because it's no longer desperate. Your calm becomes magnetic. Your indifference to outcomes signals strength. People sense you won't bend for approval. And paradoxically, this is when alignment improves. Comment: I release outcomes if this resonates. Because once an empath stops needing things to go a certain way, they become grounded, centered, and almost impossible to manipulate. And now, the final stage approaches, the phase where this power becomes undeniable. This is the final shift, the moment where everything comes together and the empath fully steps into their most powerful era. You no longer move from emotion. You no longer move from fear of loss. You move from clarity, awareness, and self-command. This is where Machiavelli's philosophy and the empath's nature align perfectly. You understand people deeply, but you are no longer ruled by that understanding. You see motives without reacting. You sense shifts without panicking. You recognize manipulation without confronting it. And because you don't expose what you see, others never know how much you understand. That makes you dangerous in the most intelligent way. The new era empath doesn't dominate rooms, they anchor them. Your calm changes the energy. Your presence carries weight. People feel that you are no longer emotionally accessible by default, and that restraint creates respect. You've mastered boundaries. You've learned silence. You've embraced detachment. Now your empathy operates under discipline. Machiavelli believed that sustainable power comes from control, not chaos. The empath who has learned control becomes someone others cannot rush, manipulate, or pressure. You are no longer reactive, you are positioned. And here's the quiet truth most people miss. You didn't harden. You refined. You still care. You still feel. But you no longer give your depth to those who can't handle it. Your emotional intelligence has become strategic intelligence. People who once underestimated you now reassess. People who once exploited you now feel distance. People who once had access now feel uncertainty. Not because you changed who you are, but because you changed how you move. This is why empaths are entering their most powerful era now. In a world addicted to noise, impulsivity, and emotional overexposure, the calm, aware, disciplined individual holds the advantage, and that individual is you. Comment: this is my era, if you feel this alignment. Because the empath's rise isn't loud. It isn't aggressive. It's inevitable. And once it begins, it doesn't reverse.